No, madam.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Oh, I'm the first. Oh my gosh.
Yes. It's possible
Yes.
others may have tried because I had technical issues myself. So
Oh, okay, okay. I've only
yeah,
just joined. I tried it
I
once now.
I can see them joining now.
Okay, good. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, good.
Good evening. How
Good
are you doing?
evening, Samantha. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
No problem. One second. Let me take a call. I think someone is trying to join us. So one second. Yeah, I think I used the wrong time zone. So for some others, it's showing that we're starting in about 56 minutes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. I can hear.
I can hear you.
Fantastic. So let's just give them some time. I picked the wrong time zone to set the meeting, so we'll let the others join.
Okay.
Rennie, there's two of you. Is that your alter ego or your twin?
That's because I joined with my phone because I was
Oh,
finding it difficult to join with my laptop. So I'm trying to join with my laptop now. So I'll disconnect
okay.
one of them once the other is successfully
That's actually connected.
joined this session.
That's fine. That's okay. There we go. Okay. Hopefully the audio is also okay. Since we're recording and it's already 7:06, we're going to start and anyone else can join later. And as usual, I gave instructions to send email to me so that I'll know if people are joining as freshers or refreshers, but I haven't got all the emails, so not everybody has got the material now. So after tonight's session, if I get the emails, then I'll send out the material. I'm just sending some messages to those who I think should be here. And we'll start. Okay, good evening and welcome to the ISO 27001 Lead Auditor training for August, not April. So I'll just change that. Yeah. Okay. And it doesn't matter if this is your first time doing an ISO course, never mind 27001 and Information Security Management System. The way we've designed this course, we will take everybody along, okay? And you'll see that we have designed the course as well to apply to First and foremost, ISO 27001, but also considering that you want to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. So what do I mean by that? You will be able to apply the principles of auditing that we teach here to other kinds of audits, to other kinds of frameworks and other kinds of audit criteria, as the case might be. So when you go out there and you're competing, you are given much more than someone that would come out and claim and say, hey, I've got ISO 27001 lead auditor training. So you will have that capability of auditing other frameworks as well. Yeah, so that you are not just competitive, but also you'll be able to differentiate yourself. So this is what we'll cover. We'll look at ISO 27001 as a standard. We'll look at audit principles and practices that apply to ISO auditing, but also applies to auditing in general. So audit principles are those things that you live by as an auditor. Okay, those things that you always consider. It's something that must always be applied to every kind of audit. Those are principles. So sometimes they call them fundamental principles. Sometimes they just leave them as audit principles and practices. Okay, so we'll look at that, and you have to now imbibe those things in your conduct. Yeah, the way you carry yourself about when you claim to be an auditor. We'll also look at the roles and responsibilities of auditors. Yes, one more thing I must also point. Some places we talk from the perspective of an internal audit, but in other areas, we're looking at it from an external auditor perspective. So it means you can both act as an internal auditor and as an external auditor working for, say, a certification body. Okay, so we'll look at the roles and responsibilities of auditors and in different grades as well. We'll also look at how to test by creating audit test plans, how to test documentation, how to interview, how to look at reconciling information or data that you have, how to test technically well, not directly because you don't really need a technical experience. You don't really need technical experience, but how to verify technical or to audit things around technology. Yeah, correctly put. We'll also look at audit planning, doing the audit. So basically the audit framework or the audit flow of planning, of executing the audit, of reporting and following up. In between all that, coordinating, whether you are an internal auditor or external auditor or just a coordinator between the two. Okay, so the audit flow of planning and preparation, doing the audit, reporting, and to who. So the audience of the audit report and the verification of the audit reports as well. So there will be a review of the audit and then the communication of that audit report to different people and of course everything else after that. And we will also look at legal and regulatory compliance. What we mean by that is what should be at the back of your mind when you have ethical considerations. So you are in a dilemma. You are working for an organization, you find something. How would it affect your audit? So we'll look at ethical considerations as well. Yeah. Good. Yeah, I pretty much covered the objective. Now, before I go further, let's introduce ourselves. Okay. My name is Roy Biyakpara, and I'm the lead trader of CyberPath Insight. This ISO 27001 lead auditor course is our proprietary course. And as the lead trainer, I also get involved in consultancy and sometimes recruitment as well. So you see, with all our training, we have add-ons. Those add-ons include CV reviews, interview preps, mentorship when it applies and where it applies, and also hand-holding when you get the job or you change your career or you move into a different scene altogether. So that's who we are. I'm going to ask that you introduce yourselves as well. Tell us who you are, your name, what you do, and where you do what you do. Finally, how you think this course will benefit you. So who you are, where you are, what you do as in your position, and why this course. Okay. In I'm going to go according to how I see your name up showing here. Chinyere, you're up first.
Okay. I need to put my camera on. I'm trying to. I'm not sure
Okay.
what angle. Can't even see myself. But anyway,
We
hopefully you
can
can
see
see.
you.
Bye. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chinyere Ugu, and I have a background in security. I've kind of been consulting for the last couple of years plus. I've done this course in the last cohort, so I'm delving into lead auditor positions with Roy in this training. So this is a refresher for me. So I'm really fascinated to be here to update my knowledge and experience. Thank you.
Fantastic. You're welcome. We now have Christopher. Chris, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Okay. We'll come back to Chris. Noel.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah,
You okay?
I'm Noella. I'm Noella. So I'm just a newbie in here. So I studied the ISO 27001 lead implementer, but I'm not a
Okay.
technical person, so I want to do by the auditing part of it. So that's why I'm here. But I already got a certification in lead implementer from you, though.
Right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Didi. Didi.
Hi, Roy. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Didi Udaja. Background, I've I've worked as a BA for some years now. Looking at transitioning into cybersecurity. Hence, the main reason I'm doing this course. This is more of a refreshers course because I did train with Roy. I think last year or something. But yeah, life happens, and I'm seizing this opportunity as a refresher.
Okay. You're welcome too.
Thank you.
Samantha.
Hi, my name is Samantha. This is my first time taking the course.
Okay.
I'm a operations risk analyst, and I wanted to take this course to help with my current role and to get a better, improve, get a better role from this certification and continue to learn.
Fantastic. You're welcome too.
Thank you.
Rennie. Rennie, we can't hear you if you're speaking. Okay. I think we've lost our audio. No problem. So, okay, we've got one more joining. Oh, Rennie, we can't hear you. You might have to unplug or drop out and join again because we can't hear you at all. It's showing that your audio is connecting. Okay, right. So we're going to look at the ISO 27001 standard. Now, one thing we must understand is that ISO 27001 as a standard is also known as an ISMS, Information Security Management System. And you'll see that ISO, a lot of ISO standards also, they have a moniker. So ISO 27001 is also known as Information Security Management System. 9001 is also known as a Quality Management System. Then there's 14,001 for environmental and on like that. So for 27,001, it is Information Security Management System. We need to get all these fundamentals right, okay? You don't want to be flustered or be lost when you're in conversation in a professional setting, when you're networking. You want to be flowing. Okay, so you need to get the fundamentals right. And then, of course, build your understanding of other parts. Rennie, do you want to do the intro now? Still can't hear you. No problem. Maybe this will be solved tomorrow. As long as you can hear, just give us a high five. As long as you can hear us. It seems to be your system. Chris, do you want to do your intro now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm Christopher Ndubisi. I'm a practicing cybersecurity and information security professional. Right from the first day I went into this career, I started with Roy here. My first course was the Certified Data Protection Officer course. And ever since, I haven't looked back. I have had quite a lot of training with Roy. So I followed him everywhere he's going. He's been my mentor. And this refresher course is a good course for me, both to add to other people's knowledge and to learn more. So happy to meet all of you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chris. Okay, so there we go. Mr. Steven, I think you're, apart from Rennie, it's you left. Okay, I think he has audio issues as well. Okay, so let's go. Now, why do you think organizations want to achieve ISO 27001 certification? What's making it gain the ground that it has gained? Anyone? Why is ISO 27001 gaining ground and being adopted the way it is? I saw a graph, the kind of the adoption of 27001 since 2015. Japan, for quite a number of years, has been number one. Then China, then USA, and others like that. And it's been a steady growth. Why do you think that is, that's the case? The adoption of 27001. What could be the driver for that?
Is it because it's got the credibility in terms of the different organizations
Okay.
and the trust, because it's got the track record of when people actually have that stamp. Organizations, it gives them the credibility with the stakeholders, customers, and regulators as well. So across the world, really. So it's got that international recognition as well.
It's got international recognition. Rennie has said to mitigate data breaches. They implement it as a framework to help them mitigate data breaches. So when you get a question like that in the exam, it's asking you why ISO 27001 is important. And I quickly flicked past this slide because it shows here organizations want to enhance their resilience against cyber threats. They want to build trust and credibility with stakeholders, whether they are customers, partners, regulators, even governments. They want to achieve regulatory compliance with other frameworks as well, and to be seen to be meeting contractual requirements. Yes, operational efficiency as well. So you see, the fact that you are assessed by a third party means you're not scoring yourself. So the score you get, which may be manifested by a certificate, will say the third party has assessed your systems, your documents, and your practices. Of course, your people, your processes, your technology as well. And they have seen that you have an adequate level of uh, security management. So it's security management really, because if we're saying security, security is very dynamic. Risks and threats are very dynamic, and that certification is a point in time. But you see, with ISO 27001, it's about how you manage it. So they come on a certain day, but they're looking back 12 months, or if it's your first time, several months, like 9 months. You've planned, you've implemented it, you've let it run, you've done your checks, and you are improving. So that's why, as a standard, it's about how you manage it. Yes, you might have had breaches, but you have cut them down. We had 20 breaches when we started as a business. Now we've cut it down to one in the last 12 months. So it's about management, putting all your resources together, training people, putting documentation, responding when something happens. It's not about perfection, it's about management. You run a home. It doesn't mean things don't get lost. It doesn't mean something doesn't get burned. It doesn't mean things don't break, but you manage it. You are feeding, you are feeding yourself, feeding others, clothing yourself, sheltering. Yeah. So it's about management rather than perfection. Okay. And of course, looking at requirements, whether they are legal requirements, whether they are regulatory requirements, other regulations, and contractual obligations. So you have interested parties, they've got requirements, and you're doing to meet those requirements. Okay, so that is the intro. And don't forget that we're going to flow into audit. We'll have to have the mindset of auditors, but it's good to have the understanding of where we're coming from, what we're doing. Because we're going to audit others, we need to see things from their own perspective. Okay. So the primary purpose of ISO, some of the objectives is risk management. It's to maintain or to assure the organization about its status when it comes to confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's for compliance with laws, regulations, standards, and even internal policies, and also continuous improvement. So in this module, we want to understand ISO 27001 requirements. And when I send out the material, I will send other resources like the understanding of 27001 requirements and case studies as well. Okay, so 27001 has 7 clauses, clause 4 to 10, that are regarded as the main clauses, the main requirements. We need to understand those. And then it has Annex A that now has 4 themes and 93 controls in the 2022 version. 2013 had 114 controls in the annex, but the main clause hasn't changed much. There are changes like clause 6.3 has now been introduced. Clause 10.2 and 10.1 have now been switched in their order, but by and large, more of the changes come in the annex. So we'll look at understanding the requirements. And because we are auditors, we more than anything need to understand requirements. That's what you'll be measuring the organization against. You'll be auditing them against the set of requirements where it says they shall do so and so. You are checking to see whether or not they've done. That is the summary of what you do. Okay, you're looking at requirements. What are they required to do? Have they done it? What's the evidence that they've done it? I will speak to people. I will look at records, documentation. I will see them do it while I'm there, if I can. I will see that technology doing what they are supposed to, what is required while I'm on the ground as well. So the summary of what you do. So we're going to look at 27001. We'll look at the history and the purpose of the standard. We'll look at some definitions, and then we'll look at the ISMS framework. Hopefully that's as much as we'll do today. What I've done is I've split the slides into 4 parts since we have 4 days of 2 weekends. Okay, so today, tomorrow, average of 50 slides, if we can. That's the target, sorry. We're going to look at the purpose and the scope of 27001. Very important. One thing I want you to understand when we start talking about the purpose and the scope of 27001 is you must start rephrasing what we say in your own words. Start thinking of how to express it to somebody else. Okay? If you are in the job market, that's a good way to go about it. Oh, now, do I understand this first part, the purpose and the scope of 27001? How will I convey it to somebody else? Not just convey it, you want to communicate so that they actually understand what you're saying. Okay? And then identify the key principles underlying the standard, recognize the benefits of implementing. So we've already looked at the importance. That's another way of looking at the benefits. Benefits, importance, and objective. Okay? They can come in those 3 forms, but they are saying the same thing. Then you look at familiarizing yourself with the structure of the standard and how it relates to other standards. So it's good to know this standard, but also, like I said initially, when we started in the intro, that you want to differentiate yourself. Yes, you want to do this audit course for 27001, but you want to show that you can do other standards as well. Because the reality is, as you'll see in some of the case studies, say in the health sector or an organization in the health industry, yes, they might be implementing 27001, but they will have other requirements because they're in the health sector. GDPR, for as an example, if it's an organization in the US, might be HIPAA, the Health Information Portability. What's the other P? The Health Information. Now I can't remember what HIPAA stands. Chris, do you remember? Health Portability Acts. Is it 2 P's or 2 A's?
2 P's.
HIPAA.
So I think it's 2 A's.
2 A's.
Yeah.
Health Information Portability and Accountability Act. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if they are in the US, I mean, since 2020, many opportunities have come that are remote. You don't even have to be in the US. You can get engagements or assignments to work with companies around the world. And if it's in the US, HIPAA might apply. If it's in Germany, their data protection regulation might apply, or GDPR, since GDPR scope is wide-reaching. Okay, so that's why we were talking about familiarizing yourself with the standard, but also with other standards as well, and then gain insight into the process approach. We'll talk about the process approach. In a nutshell, it is the plan, do, check, act. Okay, process approach. We will explain that when we get there. Let me just say this for those who are training with me for the first time. You can stop me at any point. If I'm going too fast, you can stop me at any point, ask for clarifications, but by all means, I want to know that I'm carrying everybody along, okay? So don't let me go too far before you pause and ask anything. At any point, you can just ask the question. It's better we understand what we're doing than just going for speed. So the purpose of ISO to start with is to give the endeavor of information security management a structure. If there's no structure, how do we know? So what we mean by structure is best practice, standard. Different organizations want to be able to mutually attest to another party's or another organization's information security management. So ISO provides that framework to say we are measuring ourselves against each other. We've got something to measure against. Okay, so that's the first purpose. Beyond that, like I told you, look at it from a benefit perspective and also from a purpose perspective. What are you gaining? Okay, we're going to manage our risk better. We're going to comply by conforming to ISO. We will comply to other frameworks, to laws, to regulations that apply to us. So ISO allows us to comply to other frameworks. Continuous improvement is another purpose or benefit. It'll help us protect our assets. It'll enhance trust and reputation to interested parties, whether they are customers, whether they are partners, whether they are regulators or government. Okay. And then, of course, business continuity. So that's the purpose of 27001. Now, what about the scope of 27001? The last statement captures it correctly, that ISO as requirements are generic. Why? So that they can apply to all organizations, no matter the type of organization, in any industry, of any size, of any nature. So some people will come and say, oh, well, if I've seen ISO 27001 implementation costs, what if we're just a small organization? The cost is related to your operation. So as an example, if you use a consultant, the cost will be relative to what that consultant charges. If within your organization you have those that you pay a salary and they can do it, then you don't pay anything more. The only extra cost that could arise is when you do your risk assessment and your risk treatment plan, and there are recommendations based on your risk to, say, maybe acquire or upgrade your firewall, or there are risks in this area. You need to employ someone. You need to get a DPO based on your operation. You will now need to pay a data protection officer a salary. Okay, so it depends on the cost of implementation from a consulting point of view and also from a risk treatment point of view. Otherwise, the pricing, it fits anybody. Okay, it can be tailored to the needs of any organization. ISO 27001 is based on a risk assessment. As a standard, it can apply to any organization. But what will differentiate its implementation from one to another is the risk or the profile, the operations and practices of the different organizations. Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay. So ISO actually started as a British standard. And when it started, it was the British Standard 7799 Part 2. Okay, so something to take a note of. It was initially published in actually 1995, and then by 1999, it was already making a lot of name. And ISO then, it started with, I think it was the British Chamber of Commerce and a few other bodies like Barclays and Lloyd's. So they came together to try to get best practice when it comes to information security. And as a matter of fact, it started with a smaller scope of business continuity and information sharing before it evolved into managing information security much wider. Okay, and because it gained ground and was making a lot of name, ISO decided to make it an international standard. As you can see, it was actually first published in 1995. By 1999, that's when it had already gained attention. 2000, there was already discussions to make it an international standard. And so it started, they went through all the process of planning, of drafting, of comments and stuff until 2005, when it was then taken as an international standard and took the nomenclature 27,001. By 2013, they had refreshed the standard, and all the way until 2022, in October 2022, before we had this new current standard. So ISO as a standard typically recycle or revise their standard every 5 years. Sometimes it goes beyond that, but it's typically every 5 years. Okay, there was a brief revision in 2017, but it did not take that 2017 nomenclature. It still maintained that 2013. The 2017 was not a major change. It was just to address certain threats and technologies. Don't forget, it's typically 5 years. And by 2017, those changes that taken were very minor. Now the 2022 is the standard revision of ISO standards. Okay, I'm going to leave this why history matters. If you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you're going. Yeah, it's good to know what the standard has been able to achieve in the different industries, the different countries. Like I told you, of its adoption. It's always good to know something about the past so that we know where we're going. Why should we continue with ISO? Why don't we adopt another standard? Okay. Now, I'm also going to leave this because it's just definitions. The key thing to point out here are those definitions that you should pick out and get comfortable with. Asset, what is an asset? By simple explanation, it's anything within the organization that can be categorized under people, processes, and technology. So assets can be categorized under those three. And there are things that have value and you want to protect. You know, all those benefits we talked about, those importance, they apply to assets. That means we want to manage risk because our assets might be exposed. We want to gain credibility because we have assets in our possession. We're keeping certain assets on behalf of others. What's that asset? Information. And we process the information, we store the information, and we might share it as well. Okay, so that's why as information is also an asset, and anything it touches is what we're considering. So the people that see it, that are authorized, are assets. The processes that it enables become assets because it touches them. The network becomes asset. Yep, and the technology. So the people, the process, and technology that the information touches in any of its states. Yep, that's an asset, and that's what we want to try to protect. Compliance, ISO. We don't really. It's not really correct to say we comply to ISO requirements. It's technically more correct to say we conform. So you conform to standards, but you comply to laws and regulations, even to contractual obligations. But standards, it's more correct to say you conform to. But in the world out there, people use compliance and conformity interchangeably. Okay. And in terms of information security, these are the key principles. Any information security course you do, they will always mention the CIA principles. Of course, now we're also adding S into the equation, and I'll tell you about S in a bit. But in terms of the three key principles traditionally, they are confidentiality. That means we don't want to disclose information to those who don't have a need. If they're not authorized to hear, to see, to touch, then we are maintaining confidentiality. We're keeping information in confidence. Don't forget that the main asset is the information. Okay? Excuse me. And in that same light, integrity is making sure the information is correct in its state throughout. If there's no reason to modify it, to alter it, to change it, integrity is where you ensure that it maintains its form. Yeah, so if there's no authorization to alter information, to change information, integrity is that property that you are concerned about. Availability is information needed at a point in time on demand, and you get it at that time. Now, who can tell us what the S is that I was talking about that is now added to the CIA principles? So now we have CISA. What do you think the S is for?
Security.
No, but that's a good one. So we have confidentiality of information, the integrity of information, the availability of information. All these three are part of security. They've added one more, which is S. Chris, any?
I don't know of the S. I mean, in other texts I have seen it's been Siana. So A and A, CIA, N and A, non-repudiation. So non-repudiation
Okay.
and accountability.
Yeah, and authentication, but
yeah.
But now they've added S to the three key because those ones, authentication and non-repudiation, are minor. So for the main ones, they've added an S, and it's safety. People first. Yeah. Good. Now, these principles apply to all ISO standards, not just 27001. It is customer focused. That means interested parties are a key thing. Every standard looks, so when you're auditing, they want you to consider, does it benefit interested parties? It's customer focused. And one key area where customer focus applies is risk appetite. Because if the standards are not customer focused, organizations can just say, our risk appetite is this much. They can set any risk appetite. But if they imbibe this customer focus, they can set a risk appetite, but not without looking at what the law says, not without looking at what regulation dictates, not without looking at what their contracts demand. It's like saying, I have a very fast car. It's got the speed reading goes up to 180 miles per hour. Okay? But if you are interested party focused, pedestrians, other road users, and the law that has a speed limit when you drive, can you use all of your speed range? Is it possible to go all the way, no matter how much you love to drive fast?
No.
Aha. So that's the same thought. When you are being audited by auditors like the police or your driving instructor or the person who is going to give you your license, they are looking at how you treat other road users. Is the same concept. Okay, so organizations will now set their risk appetite within all those bounds, with all those considerations. That's customer focus. Leadership is saying nothing succeeds without commitment from the very top. So, and it's in other texts like the Certified Information Security Manager course, that is called governance. Okay, consider the home, the head of the home, the home owners, the parents, the guardians are responsible. If say the council or other interested parties come around, something has happened, members of the household have maybe thrown something and it's smashed someone's windscreen or something, it's hit someone. They don't want to come in asking for who is in the house, who is the parent in the house, and you're saying you don't know what happened, you don't care. They want to see that you're committed, you are everyone in the house is responsible to you. Okay? If somebody commits a crime and they come, they want to be sure that you will take some kind of measure and do something about it. If there's a leak, if there's something happening from the house, you're going to be responsible to ensure that it's fixed, even if you don't do it yourself. So that's what leadership is all about. And all ISO standards have that. Stakeholder involvement. Everybody plays a part, not just top management. And that's why it is called Information Security Management System. I mean, everyone is involved. All your resources, you put them to ensure its success. Okay? Your practices, your training, your people, the roles, you ensure you have everyone involved in it. Okay? It's not just the information security manager, it's not just the IT people. Everybody gets involved. Okay? It's also process centric. So you can ensure that in every part of the business, just like the system or stakeholder involvement. In this case, it's about the processes. So you can talk about HR, you can talk about IT, you can talk about the different business units. It is process centric. Remember, we say it is a process approach. And when it's process centric, it means it takes input. Where are we getting this information that's important? Where is it coming from? What do we do when it comes to our environment? We're responsible once it's handed on to us, and while it's within our environment, we take care of it. And when we are handing it over, we also know who we're handing it over to. Yes, so you are sure the information that is coming is genuine and is coming from someone who has kept it secure in terms of the CIA. And while it's within your custody, you maintain the CIA when you're passing it as well. So it takes input, it processes, and there's an output. That is process-centric approach. Systematic approach to management, we've already covered that. Nothing is done accidentally. It is done intentionally. Continual improvement as a principle as well. And then fact-based decision making is tied to risk management. All the decision you make is based on fact. It has been calculated, it's been done methodically. We've also talked about the systematic approach. It's not accidental. And so the information that's passed to management to allow them to take decisions. Oh, let's merge. Oh, let's not merge anymore. Let's acquire. Everything they want to do. Remember, it's also customer focused. Every decision they want to make, they have been told based on fact, not by guesses, not just by intuition, not haphazardly, and not recklessly. By all means, it is fact-based. Okay, and also it must be mutually beneficial to everyone in the supply chain as well. We've already talked about benefits of ISO. This is just to give it to give more of it. We talked about trust. As you can see, there's trust. Competitive advantage, ensuring business continuity. We talked about that before. I think it was Reddit that talked about prevention of data breaches. It's there, like denial of service attacks. Yep, information confidentiality. So the importance of ISO, the benefits or positive outcomes, that's what we talk about here. Now the standard has this structure, clause 4 to 10, the main clauses. Where did we keep clauses 1 to 3? So if we are talking about the structure of the standard, these are the main clauses. But why are we only concerned about 4 to 10? What happened to 1, 2, and 3? These are the kinds of discussions you want to engage in when you network. Okay, you want to be able to flow, to show people that you know. So why are we excluding clauses 1, 2, and 3? Am I audible? Am I still on?
Yes, you are.
Okay. When I share the resources, I'll share the standard itself. I've got a response. Clause 1 talks about the scope of the standard, okay? Clause 2, normative references. Yes, so 1, 2, and 3 are not requirements. They introduce the standard, they talk about the scope of the standard, and things like that. We start to get requirements from clause 4 until 10. Okay, that's why you always hear clauses 4 to 10. 1, 2, 3 are not requirements. And other standards, because some organizations might want to implement more than just ISO. It's called an integrated management system. And that's the reality of the corporate world. It's very unusual that it will be just one standard, and especially so for at least medium-sized businesses and large ones. They would typically have more than one framework or standard that they apply. Okay, so we have 27,002. It complements 27,001. Just like we have clause 4 to 10, which are main clauses, ISO 27001 actually has an annex called Annex A. That Annex A is exactly the same thing reproduced in 27002. It is an annex in 27001, but that's what it is in 27002. 27002 just talks about the same thing you find in the annex of 1, explained better. Okay? It expands on 27,001's annex. So if you open 27,002 and open 27,001 annex, you'll see the same thing. It's summarized in the annex of 27,001 and expanded in 27,002. Otherwise, they are the same thing. Does that make sense? So 27,002 is saying the same thing 27,001 Annex A is saying. But if you open 27,001 Annex A, it is very light. Yeah, it just shows the controls and the control objectives in summary. But when you go to 27,002, it shows the same thing, the same numbering from clauses 5 to, okay, now it's changed from clause 5 to 8. It used to be 5 to 18. Now it's 5 to 8 in the annex. But it expands in the explanation. So it tells you more about the control objectives and the controls, how they might apply, what type of controls they are, whether preventive, detective, or corrective, and also gives you implementation guidance. So you see that it is very comprehensive in 27,002, and it's all about controls and control objectives. How do we get to controls? Can somebody explain to me why we would need to use the annex anyway? If we have clause 4 to 10, when would we ever need to look at the annex? What would make us need to use the annex that contains controls?
So when you've done your risk assessment, you need to understand the controls that apply to the risk that you've uncovered. And that's what leads to your statement of applicability.
Okay, so that's very good. Clause 6.1.3d. After you've done your risk assessment and you've identified risks, you know you now need to treat the risks. So in formulating a risk treatment plan, ISO tells you to look at the annex, get a statement of applicability. What does that mean? All the risks, all the controls that apply to you because of the risks you identified. Go to Annex A and select those controls. Controls are used to mitigate against risks. Okay, so when you do your risk assessment, you've identified your risk. The part where it gets to treating the risk with controls, you go to the annex and get those controls. Okay, and of course, that's where 27,002, like the annex, comes in. 9,001 I mentioned before is quality management. 22301 is business continuity. 20,000 is IT service management. There's 38,500 as well, IT governance. Then there's 27,018, the protection of PII in public clouds. It's similar to 27,002, being controls, but it is specific to cloud and the protection of personal information in the cloud, in public clouds. Okay, but it's also similar in terms of control. So when you do your risk assessment, you have cloud engagements, and you're looking for controls because you're a cloud uh, relationship. You can use 27,018 in the same way you would have used 27,002. Then, of course, there's GDPR and the NIST cybersecurity framework. Yeah, so we've covered the relationship between 27,001 and 2, and it's here in a table in terms of the scope, the usage, and the certification. 27,001 is certifiable. That means you can say, hey, we're 27,001 certified. You cannot do that with 27,002 because it's just a guideline on the implementation of controls. Okay, it's a guideline. There are no requirements. The language also tells you. In 27,001, you see it uses the verb shall. The organization shall. Top management shall. Or in 27,002, it uses the verb should because it's just recommending. There are no requirements in 27,002. It just recommends, guides you on what you find in 27,001. 27,001 contains Annex Clause 5 to 8, and those clauses are derived from 27,002. Now, you could get the question in the exam about Annex B. There's no Annex B in 27,001, but there's Annex B in 27,002, and that's where it looks at how the standard has changed from the previous version to the current. So in the previous standard 27,013, the Annex B was relating to 27,001, 2005. Now that we have a 2022 version, Annex B is talking about or looking at how it has changed from the previous standard to now. So it puts the two standards together and it shows how and where changes have occurred. Okay? Just in case you get that question in the exam. Any questions? Okay, we'll just go a little bit more and then we'll take a break because as you can see, we are already halfway off our load for today and we still have 2 hours, so we can afford some break later on. These are some key standards in the family of standards. ISO 27000 without any number at the end is the information security management systems that covers the overview of the whole standards and also vocabulary. So it contains key terms and definitions of words used in the standards in the 27,000 series. Okay, if you find any technical term or some um, expressions that are technical, you might find the meaning in 27,000. If it's not in 27,000, maybe it's because it's been defined in one of the other standards within the series. So there are some definition in 27,002 as an example. If that has already happened, then you won't find it in 27,000 unless you check the version. So it depends on the versioning as well. And at the moment, the current version of 27,000 is 2018. They are currently working in updating it so that it will meet the two updated standards of 27,001 and 27,002. 27,005 also has now been updated, and that is the Information Security Risk Management Standard. So when you see within ISO Clause 6 planning, it talks about risk assessment, and Clause 8.2 as well talks about risk assessments, but it's not detailed. So just like we have guidance on controls, taken from 27001. We also have guidance on information security risk management, and that's what 27005 is. It's an information security risk management standard. 27003, just like we have 27002 that guides on the implementation of controls for the annex, 27003 is a guidance on implementation of clause 4 to 10. We can't have guidance on the annex in 27002 and no guidance on the implementation of clause 4 to 10. So ISO have created 27003, which is actually a project management guide. If you want to implement 27001, clause 4 to 10, you have 27003 that can guide you. It will tell you, oh, to implement or to express, to comply with this requirement, clause 4, clause 4.1, this is how to implement it. This is the record to keep. This is the deliverable you'll get. For clause 4.1, these are the number of things you should do. 4.2, 4.3, and on like that. Clause 4 to 10. Okay, so 27003 is an implementation guidance. What's this? Oh, okay. My note taker, I thought my note taker was sending me a message. Good, good. 27004 is a measurement standard. That means we can actually measure how we are performing, the performance of our ISMS. We can measure how HR is doing, measure how IT is doing, measure how finance and the different parts of the organization is doing, and also measure the whole ISMS if you want to benchmark it against another organization. 27004 is that standard to use. Okay, so we'll take a short break if there are no questions. Any questions before we do? Okay, I'll see you at a quarter past, 10 minutes, or let's make it 15, 20 past 8. We can afford that. So see you at 8:20. I'll pause the recording. When we come back, please remind me to unpause it. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
You're welcome back. So let me start recording. I remember that. So there we go. Okay, so if you recall, we've mentioned about um, process, ISO being process centric. I've also talked about the process approach. So this is what the process approach is, and it's one of those things that is very important for both implementers and auditors to understand, and this from an auditor's perspective as well. This is what the standard should do. So when you pick up the standard, it doesn't matter what clause you're looking at from at a high level. The whole purpose of ISO 27001 is to ensure that what we said here, customer focus. Wait 1 second, I'm just going back. Customer focus, leadership, stakeholder, process centric. That is what we're looking at here. The whole reason for ISO is to satisfy so many requirements. The requirements can come from business associations. So you have business requirements. It can come from customers. Don't forget we said the standard is customer focused. Customers can have their requirements. It all depends on which organization we're looking at that has implemented 27001 or wants to implement it. The interested parties or the requirements can come from new or change service requests. It can come from suppliers. It can come from other customers. It can come from regulators. It can come from the law. It can come from the public. Yeah, so that's where the input comes from. That's the process. And then you apply your management system, all your processes, all your documents, all your systems, all your technology. You plan, you do, you check, and then you act. All the things you do with ISO is to take all these requirements, process them, and put them through your management systems. And on the other side, you get a managed information system. That means you get business results for your business requirements. You get customer satisfaction for customer requirements. You get new or changed service for those requests. Everything you are doing it more securely. No matter what the requirement is, as long as they are valid and approved or authorized, you will get outputs. Yeah. So the input comes as information, you process them through your management system, and you get satisfaction on the other side. You get results. Okay. And what we've just looked at is the PDCA cycle or the Plan, Do, Check, Act, also known as the Deming Wheel. Plan, Do, Check, Act. The P, you plan your ISMS. So all the things about scoping, about getting approval for the project. So that's from an implementer side now. They go through the PDCA, they plan the ISMS, they look at scope, they uh, draft or develop or establish an information security policy. They do their risk assessments all under the plan. They create a statement of applicability. And if you look at ISO as a standard, you see that clause 6 is actually plan. Yeah, so clause 6 is plan. Clause 5 is leadership. And we've talked about how leadership is important. Leadership and commitment. Everything is based on the support you get from management. Okay, then you plan, they do all the things you've planned, you implement them in the do phase. And when you've done them, you check performance evaluation from clause 9. You set metrics, you do internal audits, you do different kinds of checks, including management review in clause 9. And then in clause 10, you are improving the act. So that's the plan, do, check, act. In clause 10, you improve what you planned, what you did, what you have now checked, and what you checked has been fed to management, and management has now said approve. So you have an improvement plan come out in the act phase. So that's the Deming Quill. For the family of standards we've already talked about, 27,000 is the overview and vocabulary. I like to call it the head of the family because it's 27,000 with zeros. So it's the head of the family. If you see any standard with a leading 27, it is related to this family. It's like saying, oh, this surname is so unique. And anywhere you go in the world, if you hear that surname, it belongs to so and so family. Okay? Or it's from a certain part of the world. Yeah, because of the name. And that's the same with this. When you see a leading 27, it is related to information security. For requirements in this family of standards, we have 27,006, 27,001, and 27701. 27,006 is for those organizations that do external audits or that are called certification bodies. They themselves need to be certified against that standard, or more correctly, be accredited. So the requirements for them to become certification bodies is contained in 27,006. Organizations that want to be ISO certified, like you usually hear it, is 27,001. So the requirements are also there, clause 4 to 10, and then the annex as well. For 27,701, it is a PIMS, a Privacy Information Management System, similar to, say, GDPR, but it is a standard rather than a regulation. If you want to comply to GDPR or other privacy regulations around the world, getting selecting 27,701 to implement would enable you comply to privacy frameworks. Okay. Then we have general guides. The general guides are complementary to requirements. We've already seen 27,002 and 27,003. In fact, we've seen all of this except 27,032. There are many more general guides. 27,032 is a cybersecurity guide as well. So it guides on the implementation of cybersecurity framework. Then we have industry guides. 27,017 is for the information security controls for cloud services, similar to 27,002, but specific to cloud services. 27,018 is like 27,017, but this time it's for protection of personal information in public clouds, while 27,017 is for information security controls for cloud services. Like I said, there are many more standards, and if you see leading to 7, they are within this family. Any question? Any questions? Okay, good. I mentioned in the intro that audit principles and practices are things that you live by as an auditor. So any engagement, any audit engagement, you must have these principles at the back of your mind because yourself as an auditor will be measured against this principle. What would be regarded as an adequate audit or an audit that has done where you've done as much as you can to give what's that word now? Reasonable assurance. When you hear reasonable assurance with auditors, it's because you've applied audit principles. You've followed all the laid down rules that auditors must go by. Okay, so these are audit principles. But before we get into that, we need to understand what auditing means. It is us checking that organizations have correctly interpreted requirements and applied them and implemented them. So it's basically checking to see that organizations are doing what they claim to be doing or have done. So either they've done it in the past or they are doing it while we're there. Yeah, it's a verification. And the key thing there is it is systematic. That means it's not accidental. It is independent. Independence is a key attribute of any audit. Whether you are an internal auditor or external auditor, independence is very important. And it's also a documented process. You obtain the audit evidence objectively, independently. You evaluate it objectively as well. And then you determine to what extent the requirements have been fulfilled. Yeah. We've already seen these terminologies, so I'm going to just go past them. Oh, yeah, we didn't talk about audit evidence, audit findings. We talked about audit criteria, but not audit findings and conclusion. These are very, very important. Yeah, remember the basis of this course is not just for you to pass. To pass, you need to understand this concept, but you need them as, you know, like we said, it's a principle. You need to go by these principles. Audit evidence are all the records, statements of facts, or other information that are relevant to any audit criteria. In this case, ISO 27001. But audit evidence applies to any kind of audit. Okay, that's why the definition says relevant to any specific audit criteria. This audit evidence can be qualitative. That means you can describe it or you can actually count it. That is audit evidence. Okay, the records, the statement of facts that are relevant to the audit criteria, that's it. Now, audit findings different from audit evidence is when you have evaluated the evidence you collect. So if you say something has happened, I'll collect evidence, I'll collect their records, the visitor sheets, I'll collect the uh, firewall rule. We want to audit their firewall, so I'll collect the firewall rule as a printout. That is evidence. It becomes a finding when you compare it to what the standard is asking the requirement. Now that we have the firewall rules printed out, what does the standard require them to have regarding firewalls? I'll go to the standard and look at the requirement. When I look at the requirement and compare it, it becomes a finding of nothing is wrong or something is wrong, non-conformity. It does not conform to the requirement. That's when it becomes a finding. Okay, but by collecting it, it's just evidence. When I compare it with the requirement, it becomes a finding. And when I present it to the auditee after deliberations with my team of auditors, it becomes an audit conclusion. When they accept that, oh yeah, this is a valid finding, that finding becomes a conclusion. It is whatever you say it is. If you say it's a major nonconformity, they accept it. If you say it's a minor, major, or just an observation, and they accept it, that finding becomes a conclusion. Okay, that's why you see it says the audit conclusion is the outcome of an audit after you've considered all your objectives for doing the audit and all the findings. When you deliberate or communicate to the auditee or the audit client and they accept the finding, it is then an audit conclusion. Yeah. So the client is whoever is paying for the audit. Okay. Um, Whoever has also said to audit them in the um, context of ISO 27001, it is whoever has commissioned you to carry out the audit or whoever is paying for the audit to occur. They are not always the auditee. The auditee is that part of the business if it's not all of the business being audited. So say as an example, I always use this as the illustration. We know Tesco is the same anywhere you go, but there's Tesco Global. Tesco Global might want some parts of the business to be ISO certified. So if Tesco Global is who will pay you into your account because they want a number or one or more of their branches to be ISO certified, you go and audit that part that wants to get certified. They are the auditee. But Tesco Global is the audit client because they've commissioned you to do that part of it. But if you are auditing all of Tesco, the audit client is also the auditee. Okay. Okay. Um, please just give your answer to this question in the chat box. What is auditing? Is it a process or a technology? Okay. Process. We all say process. It's not a technology. Very good. So auditing is a process, something that we do. We said it is a systematic, independent, and documented process for obtaining audit evidence and evaluating it as well objectively to determine the extent to which the audit criteria are fulfilled. Now we're going to audit scope. Let me ask the question. Can we call the audit scope the ISMS scope? Can we also say the audit scope is the ISMS scope? Yes or no? And please expand on your answer, yes or no. Is the ISMS scope or the audit scope also the ISMS scope? What's the difference between ISMS scope and audit scope, if any?
This might be wrong,
Okay.
but I would have thought no because it depended on the organization.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I would have thought the audit scope would depend on each organization rather than the standard.
Okay. What would make it different? What would make it the same?
I would think maybe the size of the organization or the type
Okay.
of industry that the organization is in. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? One more answer. Chinira, are you answering?
Not really, no. Because I admitted, yeah, I was gonna say, I think
Okay. Right. The ISMS scope or the audit scope sometimes is the ISMS scope, but it is not always the case. The implementation of ISO 27001 might be this much, the whole organization. If it's the whole organization or any size that has been implemented, when you are auditing, say we are auditing now in August, we don't have to audit all of where ISO has been implemented. So the audit scope can be smaller than where ISO has been implemented because there's a requirement to audit every 12 months and to recertify, to do a recertification audit every 3 years. So as long as we can schedule the audits to cover all of the ISMS scope in the little audits that we do, maybe every quarter, as long as we're going to cover all of the parts of the ISMS with all of our schedules, then that's fine. So your audit scope can be smaller than your ISMS scope. It's not always the same. But if you scheduled it to do it all at once, one time, everything, then the ISMS scope in that case will be the same as the audit scope. Okay, so it's not always the case, but it's possible. The audit scope is not always the ISMS scope.
Roy, a quick question.
Yeah.
You did say that so far as you can make sure that the audit scope comprehensively covers, that is over the period of time, covers the ISMS scope. Is it over a year?
No, over the 3 years.
Over the 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So but there must always be justification for scope. So if one of the some of the valid reasons justification for not covering everything in a year is low risk. Remember, it is risk-based. ISO is risk-based. So management, because it's happened to me just now, not so long ago, they don't want to look at anything below a certain level. And those things are not even reviewed yearly. So why would you audit it? They are from their statement, from management statement in policy, they will review those things every 2 years. So there's no need to include them in every yearly audit. As a matter of fact, some parts of the business have been totally scoped out of yearly audits. They are only audited once every 3 years because they are very low. The organization uses a 5x5. So they only audit things that are medium to very high yearly. Everything else, 2 years, 3 years, and it's acceptable because you don't want to commit resources to things that don't change. They don't change. They're very low risk. Remember, likelihood has to do with if you're doing it in projects, you're doing proximity of the risk. When is it likely to happen? It's not likely to happen in 3 years. So why are you auditing every year? You're committing resources to it. Does that make sense, Chris?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So in terms of the audit scope, it can be a system. If what you have certified is a system, it can be a process. Yeah. So you can do processes, certain processes or departments, and it can also be the whole organization. It all depends on different implementations. And there are 4 types of audits. We have internal audit, we have external audit, we have combined audit, and we have joint audit. When you become certified auditors and you are associated with different organizations, whether permanently, whether part-time, or whether as a consultant, you could be involved in one of these 4 types of audit. Okay. Internal audit is also known as first-party audit because you are auditing self. The organization is auditing itself against the standard. Okay. But first-party audit can also be done on behalf of the organization. So if the organization does not have a dedicated audit team, they can outsource it. When you hear Deloitte, KPMG auditors come in to audit, they are not second party or third party auditors. But in the industry, you hear that a lot. Because you've outsourced it, they are acting as if. So just like you will pay a retainer for a legal counsel acting on your behalf, okay? They are not third parties. They are acting on your interest. So first party is either you have the auditors and they are auditing internally, or you are doing an internal auditor auditing, you're doing internal audits, having paid an organization to do it on your behalf because you don't have a dedicated team, or you want to complement or supplement their conduct. Okay. And every time, independence is very important. Whether you are large or small, independence is important. The key thing for auditors in internal audit is to say, oh, I'm in a different department, or I've not been involved in the implementation of what I'm going to audit. So if you don't have a dedicated team and you want someone from another department to do your audit, it must show that they are independent of that area they're going to audit, or they've not been involved in the implementation. External audits are two types. So we've talked about first party for internal. For external, you have second party and third party audit. The second party audit is when you do due diligence, no? And it's a two-way thing. When you do due diligence on your partners, suppliers, that is a second party audit. But they can also audit you. They might also want you. They might also do due diligence on you. Okay? So that's second party audit. Third party audit is really, really independent, like certification audits. There's, as you see, the further away you go away from the uh, area of concern, the auditee, the more independent. So first party audit, independent of the process. Second party audit, you have a relationship, they have interests. Third party audit, more independent. So it is also known as the level of assurance. The further away the relation in terms of the relationship, the more the independence, the more the objectivity, and the higher the assurance. So that is levels of assurance. And then we have,
question, Roy.
Go ahead.
So if you have suppliers and you're auditing them, is that second party?
That is second party, yes.
Okay,
It is
so which
also known as
means
due diligence, yeah.
so which means second party audits are facilitated by predetermined contracts?
Yes. They are determined by contracts, exactly.
Okay, so you commented that it could be a two-way traffic.
Yes.
So if for example Tesco is auditing their first tier suppliers,
Yeah.
does it mean the first tier suppliers can also audit Tesco in return?
Potentially, but it's not always the case. It is there as a concept, but you see, Tesco is so large that, and also it takes me to the point where I'll tell you that this right to audit. So, as an example, we have Microsoft as suppliers, and we go into Microsoft to audit them. Not realistically, but that relationship, they are. It's a two-way thing, but because they are so big, we will take what they publish on their website. So
That's
instead
true.
of because imagine that they have like as Microsoft, they have several hundreds of thousands of suppliers or relationships. If they will allow that right to audit to all their suppliers, they will not do what they do. They will not be Microsoft anymore. So that right to audit is limited. Okay, it's very limited. It's not always the case. The alternative for that right to audit, because if they allow, say, CyberPath to go and audit this week, it will tie them down. They need to respond to CyberPath. They need to provide this. They need to commit someone to attend to the auditors. And then another supplier says, "Oh, we want to do another next week," or two suppliers want to do this week. So in the audit world, it is accepted that the right to audit is not easy. Smaller organizations can say yes, we'll allow you, but it's something you don't see with big organizations. When they do it, it's limited. So NASA can audit Microsoft, but CyberPath cannot audit Microsoft.
Okay.
And Microsoft can also audit NASA.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So that right to audit is not always easy to get. The alternative is for them to publish to smaller organizations. They'll put it on their website that, hey, we are ISO certified. So that alternative is accepted because to be ISO certified, an independent third party would have audited them. So you see, Microsoft has, just like AWS and Azure, they've got what they call, I can't remember, it's certification portal where they publish all their certifications, Cyber Essentials, ISO, uh, cloud assurance, cloud security assurance, they have it there. So you know that an independent third party has audited them and has seen them to be. So what's the you don't have any need to go and audit them. That certification is an accepted alternative.
If you're a client, can you audit the subcontractors of your own suppliers?
If you are,
So if you're a client, you are the clients, you have suppliers, and those suppliers have got their own subcontractors. So a bit of your information is passed to subcontractors. Can you audit those subcontractors as well?
it all depends on your terms. It's unusual, but it's not impossible.
Okay.
So it will depend on the terms of the contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are real life scenarios.
Real life scenarios. Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. But we always have to check the contract. Oh, what did we say in the contract? Oh, it says no go, or it says fine. Then you will always have to go to the contract. And that's why, as part of the process of implementation, it says interested parties requirement. And part of this requirement is looking at the contract. Okay, so if you imagine that you've got thousands of contracts, it's impossible to go through each one. But if the contracts are assigned owners, then you can ask them. Then they will, yeah.
So what's best practice when you're doing your due diligence?
Best
Should you
practice
stop with your direct suppliers, or should you
absolutely,
extend to their
absolutely. Direct suppliers, that's best practice.
Okay.
Nobody will fine you, penalize you for not checking subcontractors. You
Okay.
pass requirements to your direct suppliers. They should pass it to the others. All you need to see is, oh, did they pass it to the other? Remember I told you about inputs. Where are we getting the information from? And then when it's within us, and then who are we passing it over to? That's your responsibility. Inputs within your walls and who you are giving it to.
Okay.
But you must pass requirement to say you're going to use subcontractors. Make sure you pass this to them. It's the same thing in GDPR as well. Pass this requirement to others. Your responsibility is to make sure if they use subcontractors, they are telling them what you are telling them.
And so far as you have evidence that has happened, that's you being
100%.
exonerated. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's similar to, I just want to see whether I'm correct in this. In some scenarios where safeguarding, for instance, where you expect some of the people that use your services to apply the same requirements that you are expected to, if they're delivering the service in terms of safeguarding, and we make sure that they show you that they've done that. So
that is exactly correct. Exactly the same thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So combined audit versus joint audit is another type. Combined audit is when you are doing an integrated audit. So combined audit is also called integrated audit. That means you're auditing more than one framework, more than one audit criteria. Quality, environmental together. Occupational health and environmental together. Information security and IT together. That is combined audit. It is of the management system combining. Okay, two different frameworks together is combined audit. And then another concept is the joint audit. That is when two different auditing bodies are auditing the same client or auditee at the same time. Okay, so a joint audit is different from a combined audit. A combined audit is of the management system. It could be one audit firm auditing two management systems at the same time. Why? To cut costs, to cut the downtime, business disruption. Audits affect operations. So if we have two certifications, instead of doing one this week, one next month, why don't we do a combined audit? Save time, save resources, save costs. But a joint audit is using two auditing bodies to audit one target client or auditee. That is a joint audit, like a tag team. Okay.
Right. Can you
Yes.
go back to the last slide?
Sure.
Sorry. And apologies for having to pull us back. It's just that these things rear their heads in very funny ways in real practice. So for joint audits, what sort of scenario would trigger a joint audit?
speciality. So, as an example, you are, if you look at the frameworks we talked about, so say there's ISO 27001 and there's 27 and there's PCI DSS for an organization, but instead of doing one audit this week and the next another one next week, they can cooperate to audit. Oh, we don't have the capability for. So as a matter of fact, let me use a real life scenario. Not just so long ago, it was an SOC, SOC 2 audit and a 27001 audit. So the client said, in terms of scheduling, can we do it so and so week, where the audit body was proposing a different date? And they said the reason for that is because they have a SOC 2 audit. They will look at the same thing that you will look at. So can we have a joint audit? Yeah. So they will cooperate. They will look at the same thing. This auditing body doesn't do a lot of SOC 2. That other one does SOC 2, but they want them to do it together. And so the cooperation. It must be in agreement before you do it. And there are so many other scenarios where it can happen. Cyber Essentials is another one. Yeah.
So if you are an auditor, then you need to necessarily collaborate with the auditor for the other kind of audits.
On the other firm, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because you might share notes. They have their strengths. Their strengths might be technical audits. Yours might be documentation and things like that. And because you're on the scene together, so the things you want to look at, they might have in their possession at a certain time. And that's why it's a joint audit. Okay. These principles we talked about, you live by. Let's see where so we're just in a good place now. After these principles, I think we should be good for today. The principles of auditing, like I said, is something that you take with you in every audit engagement. These are the things you live by. When you are checking, when you are interviewing, when you are evaluating, when you are developing your report, creating your report, when you are communicating it, when, in your conduct while you are on the ground, on the scene. These are all the things that you live by, the principles of auditing. And there are principles for auditors and audit managers. Then there are principles for the process of auditing. Okay. So four for auditors and audit managers, and two for the audit process. Now, what are those four principles for auditors and audit managers? There is integrity, there is fair presentation, there is due professional care, and there's confidentiality. So when auditors are being evaluated, they're being evaluated. Did they follow best practice? Did they apply the principles of auditing? That's what they always look at. Are they competent? So they evaluate you on your competence, they evaluate it on your conduct, and your conduct is based on these principles. Did the auditor act with integrity? Did they present fairly? Did they take due professional care? That means by virtue of your training, you applied all things you've been trained to do. If you see you're a qualified auditor, did you apply all those things that a professional auditor should do? Okay, it means when they check all these things and they find that the audit report has some problems, you didn't see something, but did you apply all these things? Did you take due professional care? Did you maintain confidentiality? Yeah, so this is how they evaluate auditors' conduct during audits and even past the audits as well. So we're going to look into each, we're going to dive into each principle now for auditors and audit managers, and then for the process itself. For auditors and audit managers, we talked about integrity, and as you can see, it's the foundation for professionalism. We cannot talk about due professional care if we don't talk about integrity. It means you are honest in your performance of work, you are diligent, you take care, and you are responsible. If you say we are going to audit people, you're going with your laptop and you're going to audit whether they lock their screen after 15 minutes, you you must be locking your screen as well. So you must be responsible. You must be professional. You must be diligent. Okay? You observe and respect applicable legal requirements. Imagine that your instructor or whoever is by your side when you are trying to get your driver's license does not obey the road signs, does not is not careful, is not a careful driver, is reckless, does not obey speed limits and stuff like that. It's the same thing we're talking about. You are the auditor. If you're going to test people, you must be ready to be measured by the same thing. You know when they say, "What gives you the moral authority to talk to me about blah 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 blah?" When you are doing so and so. So if you have a bad record, don't come and start what's the word now? Pontificating to me. Okay? So you must observe and respect applicable legal requirements as well. You must demonstrate technical competence when doing work. So the areas assigned to you, if it's beyond your capacity, it is acceptable to say, no, I cannot do it. It's better to say no than to take on work that you are not competent in doing. Okay? It is not a problem whatsoever. Also work in an impartial manner and be sensitive to any influences that may be exerted by other interested parties that will have an influence on your judgment. Oh, my cousin is in this organization. My landlord is here. Anything that will make you impartial, yeah, you need to declare any conflict of interest whatsoever. Then fair presentation. Your audit findings, your audit evidence, audit conclusions, and your reports must be an accurate reflection of what you have done. Don't embellish it and say, oh, I actually forgot to check so and so, so let me put it in my report. Okay? Now, fair presentation, everything I've done is what I'm presenting. And if you encounter any obstacles during the audits or there are unresolved diverging opinions, what are those diverging opinions? Something you found, they say, oh no, that's not it. Your audit findings and audit conclusions must be so sound that they will always do this. If there are any unresolved opinions, because don't forget, sometimes uh, the auditee or the audit client know their stuff. They've also got security people sometimes, so they might know their stuff too. They might know ISO, okay? But if there is any part where there's no agreement, then of course you need to report that. Okay? Your report must be truthful, accurate, timely, clear, and complete. Now, due professional care. That means you apply due diligence and judgment in auditing. Okay? Um, because the confidence that is placed in an audit is based on your conduct. Okay? So how much assurance, how much should we rely on the output of an audit? Any auditee or audit client would want to know. It is based on your due professional care. Okay. Oh, it's Roy. Yeah, we can read it tomorrow. Yeah, they're not shaking, they're not jittery. It says an important factor in carrying out their work with due professional care is having the ability to make reasoned judgments in all audit situations, whether it's from an ethical perspective, from a legal perspective, or a more well, not really moral, um, from a legal perspective, from an ethical perspective, and what's the other one? From a conflict of interest perspective, okay, and of course, professional and technical perspective. There's the assurance that you know your left from your right, okay. You have confidence in your judgment. That's due professional care. And then confidentiality. It's another big one. It's a big principle. Auditors must be careful because they come into contact with information, revealing information sometimes, whether business information, personal information, and things like that. Yeah, they must always maintain confidentiality. Auditees and auditors and auditees and audit clients can actually reject an auditor on the basis of confidentiality. So if an auditor has been known to not be confidential, keep things in confidence that they find, the audit client and auditee can say, "Oh, we don't want this auditor on this assignment," if they have good justification for that. Okay. And then there are two we said for the audit process: independence and evidence-based approach. For independence, we've already seen it. Whether it's an internal audit, make sure you are not checking yourself. Okay, you are not scoring yourself. You don't do an exam and score yourself. So it's the same thing with audits. As much as possible, independence is very important, and there must be a declaration of no conflict of interest. Okay, independence. Uh, it says the objectivity, the independence must be perceived and in reality. So I must perceive it that there's no conflict of interest, and it must be so in reality. If there's any appearance of non-independence, then auditees, interested parties must be satisfied completely. It always takes me to places when I think of this independence. In some countries, I'm not going to call their names, the judiciary is not independent. The electoral bodies are not independent. So if there is any doubt about their independence, there must be recusal. Okay? If there's any doubt of independence, appearance or perception, it appears. Why? Because we are related. How can your relative be the judge that will try this case? There's no independence. That's the perception. Then there must be a recusal. Okay? Now, we are talking about evidence-based approach here, but you'll see that later on we'll talk about risk-based approach in auditing. That's different. It's not part of the principles, but it's also a very effective way of auditing. Now, evidence-based approach is basically saying that all evidence must be verifiable. All evidence must be something you can verify. If they say we have policy, show me. If they say, oh, we have reset all our firewall rules, can I verify? So it must be verifiable. That's the basis of auditing. All evidence must be verifiable. You don't need to verify them, but they just need to have that quality of being verified if it comes to it. Okay. Aha. This is a big one. Ethical consideration. In some texts like CISA, the Certified Information Security Auditor course, it is called ethical dilemma. So when you are faced with ethical decisions, you are, oh, what do I do? You don't know what to do. You must go first with what does the law expect you to do? Okay, so the law always comes first. Let me, what does the law say in this situation? What should I do? I found uh, files, cases of fraud here where I'm auditing. It may not be part of the audit scope, but it's a dilemma, and it can be. So if I see anything about fraud, what should I do? What does the law in that place say? Because you might be auditing in different places. It might be in the UK, it might be in Africa, it might be in America or other parts of Europe. Okay, so what does the law say where I am now? What am I supposed to do? If you can't find anything, what does the regulation say? So that's the next step. And from there, your contract. What does the contract say? Your mandate or policy of the establishment. And then your professional affiliations and the code of conduct associated with your membership. Okay, so the law, regulation, contract, policy, and your professional associations. You must always consider the scope of the audit. So if you've seen fraud, the law says you should report immediately to law enforcement. You do that. If you don't find anything in the law of where it's a as because every uh context, every location have got different views about different things. As an example, cyber, what's that? What's the word now? They call it 419, Yahoo Yahoo. What's the proper name? Because now I don't know the English term for it anymore. Cyber fraud. Okay. The view about cyber fraud in different places. Yeah, so they view cyber fraud differently in different places. Yeah. So cyber fraud is different in different places. So if you are in a location here in the UK, cyber fraud, they have zero or very low tolerance for cyber fraud. But in certain places, it is even regarded as a positive. They might even say, "Oh, well done, you've caught a big fish." Yeah. As a matter of fact, in some places in the Orient, the government actually sponsors young people to carry out some forms of cyber attacks. Yeah. So, okay, we have come to the end of today. This is what we'll kick off tomorrow. Yeah. So you see, I talked about risk-based approach. We just covered evidence-based approach, where we said all evidence must be verifiable. But in terms of audit practices and effectiveness, uh, risk-based approach can also be used, and you see how it's different from evidence-based approach. We'll cover that tomorrow. Any questions before we go? Same time tomorrow, anyway.
Yeah, Roy, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Quick one with respect to where an auditor disagrees with a finding. There's a disagreement in a finding between an auditor.
The auditor disagrees with who?
With the client.
Okay.
With regards to a finding. You did say that this has to be documented. In what?
If it is unresolved, how would you? Yeah. So you must have shown how you tried to resolve it. How would you have tried to resolve it? First of all, you tell me.
Well, you go back to what the requirements are to identify exactly what it is, and then look at the evidence.
Fantastic. So you must try that first, and also don't forget that we're talking about conclusion. You must have been carrying the audit client along. Don't wait till the end. It is unresolved if you don't carry them along. So if you find it, remember that's why you have meetings day by day. You present it to the business area. If the business area have already accepted that yeah, they would have they should, if you explain it to them well. You see, this is why best practice is important. The opening meeting, you would have explained your methods, who is doing what, introduce yourself, how your methodology, what is a finding, what is an observation. You must have held that meeting to try to educate them about what kind of audit you're going to do and what a finding is. Okay, what is a major, what is a minor? There's usually arguments when it comes to major. Why? Why would there be arguments in major and not minor and the rest? Because that's the one that can fail them. That's the one that can cause them to pay again for an audit. So before it becomes major, it must be very obvious, and you would have explained it to them that this is what a major is. Okay? If they fail a whole requirement, that's a major non-conformity. If the risk fails, if the control is not effective, it's supposed to be a preventive control. It does not prevent. It's supposed to be detective. It does not detect. It's supposed to be corrective. It doesn't do its job. It's not effective, and it's obvious. It's major. So it's very hard to not be, if you are professionally astute, it's very hard to not be able to convince. You must have followed best practice, done your due diligence. That's why all these principles are important. But before I get to the but, anyway, some of the reasons why these things are unresolved is when auditors don't follow best practice. They don't carry auditees or audit clients along. They are not properly experienced and they've given them things to do. They don't communicate correctly. So that's why this training is important. Okay. So there's always a root cause why that resolution or non-resolution exists.
So what part of that are you documenting then? Are you documenting the process you've taken to resolve that issue?
You're documenting that you followed best practice. You had an opening meeting with them. You explained everything to them. So if it's a real finding, it will be resolved. It might be that they are, they try to auditees and audit client try to resist when they know they are going to fail.
Yeah.
But if it's a proper finding, you document it and escalate it.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. As long as it's not going to reveal that the auditor is not competent or is not professional, hasn't done due diligence. If it's apparent that that's what's going to happen, the lead auditor must take charge. And then, oh no, that's part of the best practice is peer reviewing each auditor's work. Yeah, so if the team has been selected correctly, there will be nothing unresolved. You either convince the auditee or the client, or you correct it and say, oh yeah, it's not. Okay, so if the team has been properly selected, that will definitely be resolved. Is that good? So you see that communication, you must be communicating with them. Don't wait until the end to tell them, oh, you have a major. It's not going to work. But if
Because
you've
this
been
is
kind
where,
of, yeah.
yeah, because when at the end you kind of have that meeting to go through things anyway, and then you said you'll be signed off by the lead auditor. So
Yes.
hopefully they've had enough time to for
go through
everybody.
it.
Yes, and then the management will then agree, and then
Yeah.
there's a kind of sign off. So
Yeah.
in terms of management response, yeah.
Yeah. So that communication is important, carrying them along. If the business unit where you're auditing has accepted your finding, then they would have communicated it to top management. They will not leave it till the end. And also findings, good practices to give them the opportunity to correct findings while you are still there. So you give them that opportunity as well, if it's a proper finding. That's why communication is very, very important. Okay. Shall see you same time tomorrow. If there are no further questions. Yeah.
Right.
Samantha. Yeah.
I haven't received the materials that were sent beforehand. Can I send you my email address?
I'll just put my email address. So you
Okay.
send me an email and I'll respond back with. Yeah. I'll just put.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
So there's the email there.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.